Greetings, greetings. We are at part 2 of the sketchbook walkthrough video where I show you this book that I printed up years ago. In the last video, I covered up this face, but I wanted to show you my old school looking face. I was a lot younger then. So I hope you enjoy the video. In this video, if you did not catch part 1, I'm going to be talking to you about a lot of my tips, tricks, secrets. I'm going to be showing you a lot of stuff. So watch all the way through so you don't miss anything, because I guarantee you, if you turn your head away for a millisecond, you're going to miss something that could literally change the way your drawings look from here out. All right, let's jump in. This drawing came out really cool because I think that I captured just the way he was staring off into the distance. I mean, he really looks like he was thinking deep about something. Like, he's pondering something, right? And then you have these dark areas. So you have this really dark blot here, this darker area here, and then darkness, 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 and thicker line, darkness. So spreading the dark areas out around the drawing really works. So like I have some smudging here on the forehead, smudging here, and then smudging here. So just kind of spreading it out, right? Distributing it. Also, I added a little bit of hair texture here. I didn't go too crazy with it, but I did add some hair texture. Oh, and I also wanted to point out the dots, the little dots, the subtle dots that communicate the texture of the skin, and the crow's feet. You see how this line is really thick here, and then it transitioned to very, very faint, kind of like this here. So it's something that you could actually practice, is just practicing doing really heavy lines and then going really thin and then really heavy and then really thin and then really heavy and really thin. This is something that will, again, I said this earlier in the video, but this will help transition your drawing style tremendously. Oh my God, it will just change a lot of stuff. It'll change the effect. This is a really big ear. If I didn't show you this, you probably wouldn't have saw that. But this is another mistake. I made the ear gargantuan. Like his ear comes way to like the center of his forehead, right? Nobody's ear, if you measure it, most people's ears don't come up like that. And if there are people's ears who come up that high, I've never met them. But anyhow, I just want you to see how that measurement works. Technically, by I believe Andrew Loomis is those old school art books where they would measure things and to try to get the anatomy right and things like that, which I don't do. I don't measure things, and I don't teach my students to measure things. And then when you don't measure things, you do little mistakes like this, right? But for me, this is what makes the drawing more entertaining. It makes it, I don't know. I just love the drawing. I see nothing wrong with this ear being super big. And so, yeah, that's just part of the way that I draw, is being honest and in the moment. And also it gives you less to think about. The less you think about when you're drawing, the more your mind is able to focus on communicating what you see. But if you're so bogged down with measuring and getting proportions right and all that other kind of stuff, then it's going to really take some of that bandwidth away from seeing and drawing. You know what I mean? So do you want a clear communication? Okay, so you want a clear communication going from what you see translated into your brain, transferred down to your hand and into your drawing. And what tends to happen is we'll have that clear communication when we're drawing, but then we come upon a mistake. And then once we see those mistakes, we start thinking, oh my God, I made a mistake. And then, we start having the doubt, is the drawing working and all this other kind of stuff. And then the last thing we think is, I must correct it, right? And when we have that mistake fiasco thing happening in our head, as you see those little dark words in there, it's clogging up the transmission from what we see going down to the hand. Then the worry kicks in, right? And then we need to try to correct it. We need to try to fix it. And this is derailing us from the clear communication of we see something and we're drawing it, right? So this filters down through the hand. All of those worries and mistake correcting and all that other stuff filters down into your hand. And then next thing you know, the drawing starts going off course a lot of times. Now, is this for everybody? Not necessarily, but for most people that I've taught over the past 25 years, this is the case. So this drawing here was really cool because I did a certain, a really wavy organic line quality. Instead of doing lines that are more straight here, I did more of a organic line quality. And this is where I'm just allowing myself to naturally have waves in a line. I am kind of jittering my hand just a little bit, but not so much. And that's what happened here in these lines. If you notice here, you can see how these lines, they all have an organic quality to them. I don't even think that there's one line on here that is straight, like a line on here that's, you know, just kind of straight like that, that has a straight element to it. Mostly, actually there is, looks like right here, looks like it might be straight, but it's not that straight. It still has a little wave to it. And this line here looks like it's got a little straightness to it. But then the rest of these lines, even as they look like they may be straight, they actually have like little wiggles and jiggles in them, right? Right. This one here and this one here. And here's another one of those situations where I really forced perspective, or I forced a shape. So I forced this hat to squeeze up when it was probably a little bit wider, because if her head is this size, then I would assume the hat probably started back here. But I think I did that on purpose because I wanted everything to kind of go up in like almost like a triangle. You know what I mean? And so that's what I really like about this particular drawing as well. And I'm not sure what this was, some sort of braided rope. I actually like that too. It's kind of cool. But if you look at these lines here, these lines that just remind me of, you know, like I say, the Da Vinci-esque, Michelangelo-esque type line quality. These two young men were my students. They actually were in one of my drawing classes or one of my art classes that I was teaching back in 2011. And they asked me to draw them. A lot of my students don't believe that I could draw people with a ballpoint pen in 5 minutes or less and capture lots of likeness. And so I think I told them, like, you know, yeah, I could draw you and I could draw you really fast, this, that, and the other. And they were like, yeah, whatever. Why don't you draw us? And then so I drew pictures of them. Here you could actually see that I'm suggesting the texture of the hair in the hairline here. They have really tight curls in their hair. And so I suggested that there, as well as here. And so whereas I could have did the whole area, I only did part of it, this part here. Now, this was one of my students, Gold Schneider. I was training him in drawing at his house in the Sunset in San Francisco. And we would do drawing exercises. I would give him drawing exercises to do. And then I would draw him while he was doing the exercises. And what I like about this particular drawing is the glasses. I really like the glasses here. Something about these lips that I like, but I also like the fact that I added just a little bit of hair to the arm. You can barely see it, but there's hair there. There's a suggestion of hair. And I also like the way I captured his hands holding this pen. This is the fingers wrapped around the pen. I thought that was pretty cool. The stripes of the shirt are pretty cool too. Here's one of those mistakes. I think when I was drawing him, I actually drew the top of his head right here, and I was going to create his head there, but then I decided to make his head a little bit higher. So I just went up and did another line here, and I leave that line there. So that's one of the things that you'll see throughout my drawings, is that I leave my mistakes. I don't tend to correct them at all, just leave them. You know what I mean? And you could actually see I'm drawing his arm a couple times here. So he had his arm. This is sometimes when people move while I'm drawing, I'll draw them in the different poses that they have when they're moving around. So in this one, he had his hand kind of, his fist kind of in his cheek, and then he moved it up here. And then he moved his hand down here to actually hold down the paper while he was drawing. Now, this drawing here is very interesting because of the line quality here. You can see I use very light lines here. And then I also use very loopy lines. I'll call them loopy lines, but just like, really kind of dancing around with the pen and creating an energy, a wispy type energy with the pen. And so you'll see that here, even this jawline is not even, it's not as you would think it would be, like more of a straight line where it's more wiggly, jiggly, got a lot of organic energy in it. As well, you see these little baby hairs, very light, faint baby hairs, make a big difference. Sometimes you do a dark line like this here, but then you go in and do these really light lines. And the little eyelashes there on the other side add a lot of energy and detail. Now, this drawing I really love because of obviously the shadows, but also the texture of her face, right? So I use those leading lines that sort of kind of tell you the curvature of the face, and that it suggests the curvature of the face. So we have some volume in these cheeks here, right? And these lines here, all these little very subtle wrinkles. So in when you're in person and you're looking at this person, they actually have these very faint wrinkles, but you don't really want to draw them so starkly. So if I were to do a quick version of this drawing, so let me just put the lips in there real quick. So now if I were to actually draw these wrinkles that she had in her lips, if I drew them with a heavier line, it would make it look a lot different. You know what I mean? You see how distracting that is, because these lines are the same thickness as the lines over here. And so if, like, let's do another example. Like if I were to do the crow's feet right here, or the wrinkles on the side of the eye, if I did them very light, notice how I'm kind of flicking my pen. I'm sort of doing like a little, it's like an energetic dance with my pen. You know what I mean? And when I do that, sometimes I hold my breath when I'm doing it. So I'm bringing this around here, and then the little wrinkles around the eye. Right now, I'm barely holding this pen. I'm like dragging it like this. So if I were to do these wrinkles here, what I'm doing is I'm channeling the way that I think that Michelangelo and Da Vinci drew back in the day, is that they really paid attention to each line that they put down. There was no line just thrown on there like, oh, let me just do some crow's feet. No, it was like, well, if we're going to do this here, suggesting her cheek, the volume of her cheek, then we're really gonna like give the attention to each line, even though this line is drawn very subtly. So even though, and the reason why I'm stopping talking while I'm drawing is because even just talking while I'm teaching this is disturbing the line quality. So if I be quiet, so that's kind of the concept, right? So that's the idea, is, to really give attention to each line and treat each line as is a life of its own, no matter how faint that line is. So a lot of us like to give a lot of attention to our darker lines, like the hair here. If I were to draw her hair, we want to give a lot of attention to that. But what about these very faint lines that are up under the hair that's in the front? These are suggesting hair in the background, right? So if I were to draw those lines, I would take my time. And so that's pretty much how that works. And like little areas here suggesting the lip of the eyelid, how this curves around this way. So drawing that. So what I'm doing is I'm going hard and I'm just softening up, going hard and softening up, but I'm barely doing it. And I get so deep into it that I actually hold my breath when I do it. So you may think moving that slow is going to take forever to finish this drawing, right? So anyhow, what I was saying is that a lot of times we want to rush through a drawing. We want to hurry up and get the drawing over so we can see the final product. But the more we care about, like, look at these little lines right here. The more we care about the drawing. Now, because this pen is so thick, it's easy to put a dark line, even when I go really light. So I'm trying my best, do very subtle lines. So that's basically what I wanted to show you there is, number one, don't rush through your lines. Don't rush through your drawing. And number two, just take your time and really get into each little detail and let each little detail have a life of its own. Like each of these little circles, I try to treat everything just as important as other things. So these little marks here, I try to treat them just as importantly as I treat this line here of the eyelid, right? And don't treat anything less important. And then your whole drawing will have energy. It'll have like an animated type energy. Like it looks like this lady literally could just start talking right now. And again, that's where I get my inspiration from looking at old school books and, old school, old master drawings and things like that. There's another drawing of Gull Schneider. There's one of my students, and I drew him over and over again while they would be working on exercises. And a lot of times I'll be lecturing as well. And here I'm adding some of the hair, suggesting the directions of his hair, the hair going up this way, coming down this way, and then the hair growing, coming this way. Little bit of hair suggestions there. This hair I really like because it goes in so many different directions. So we have this big area here that goes this way. Let's look at this. We have this area right here is going this way. And then this area is going this way, so it's coming away from there. And then you have this area that's just sort of, just areas of the outlining the outer contour of the hair shape in this area here. And so, you just have hair going in different directions. And then I have this here and this over here. And so it just kind of makes up this energy. And as I'm drawing these, I'm actually really deep into the energy of the drawing. I'm looking at the person, I'm feeling their energy, I'm trying to assume different things about their life or whatever. Or sometimes I'm not even thinking about drawing at all. And I'm just trying to depict what I see. And that's another one of the practices and recommendations I tell people is try not to think about drawing while you're drawing. Try to think about something else. Ruth Smith, it's the lady who's on the cover. It says one job at a time and that done well. So basically she's saying whenever you do something, don't try to multitask. Don't try to, do several things at once or do one thing while you're thinking about something else. And I just told you to do that. Actually, I told you to draw while you're thinking about doing something else. But she's saying do one thing at a time and do that well. One thing I really love about this drawing is the texture of these little hairs here. I mean, that is her actual hair texture. And I remember focusing and trying to emulate these little strands of hair. Now, I know most people might think it's impossible to just look at an individual strand of hair and try to draw that strand exactly as it looks. Well, I was trying to do that. That's one of those things. Like, I wonder if back in the day, these people who were, masters of drawing back in the day, back during when times were simple, there were no cell phones, there was no email, there was none of the distractions that we have in our world today. And these people were commissioned by kings and queens and all sorts of rulers to do paintings. So this was their life. This is all they did was draw and paint and study drawing and painting. And so in order to pretend like I lived back during that period, I was wondering, like, would I try to draw the hair as it is, each strand as it is in real life? So like this little strand here. So I think I did a pretty decent job. My fingers were actually in the way when I did that. So I'm going to try it again. Let's see if I can pull this off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to draw this strand right here. So basically, that was what I came with. And I don't know if it looks like that. It looks like it to me. And I don't even know if you can see the strand that I was drawing. But my point is, that is how detailed I would get with these drawings. I literally would try my best to communicate what I saw. And you also see these little really light lines here going up here, also over here. And I really like the design of these glasses. These are the same glasses I believe she had. Yep, she had these same glasses on here. And it was something about the arm, the design of the arm of the glasses, looking at different old school types of glass frames and trying to draw them. And you could actually tell what kind of jacket she had on, like one of those London fog type jackets. And I even drew the stitch of the buttonhole. There's like a stitch around the buttonhole. Now this here, this was one of those drawings where I'm literally trying to jump into the picture and live in this picture, right? I try to communicate these hairs absolutely as they were in real life, okay? And that is not the easiest thing, but the more you try to do this, the better you will get at it. It's not one of those things where you'll be able to do it the first time and just nail it. Mistake. I think I made the nose come back here. I don't know what's going on here, but this looks like a huge mistake here. And again, as I always say, I just leave mistakes and let them. Mistakes only add life and character to your work. So I just leave the stuff that doesn't work at the time. Like this guy's head probably was too short here. I wanted it to come up higher. So I did another line, but then it gives like an abstract impression within the drawing. So don't try to correct things like this line here. This line, I'm sure I didn't want a really long, harsh line right there, But it's fine. It works. You know what I mean? Most of the time, and when you first looked at this drawing, you probably didn't notice any of these things. You may have noticed this, but more than likely you didn't notice this and didn't notice this. And that's what you have to remember, like this accidental line right here. That's what you have to remember, is that when people are looking at your work when it's done, it's very rare that they're going to go straight to the corrections. Like this here, I don't know what this is. Again, another straight line. But people aren't, their eye's not going to go to those things. Their eye is mostly going to go to the things that did work or the drawing overall, right? Especially if you present it confidently too. Like if you present it like, yeah, I don't know about this drawing, the first thing they're going to do is say in their mind, well, what about that drawing don't they know, right? So let me look for the mistakes. Then they're going to start seeing all these things that don't work. But if you say, yeah, this is a drawing that I did, or, whatever, then people just tend to look at it as a whole. And when they see these mistakes, they see them as done on purpose. Like I didn't say when I was going to draw this guy, I'm going to draw 2 lines for the top of his head. Like that wasn't the goal, right? So I just accidentally drew his head a little bit too shallow. And then I said, no, I don't like it that way. I want it higher. So I just drew another line, but I left this line. Now I could have whited this out or tried to correct it or draw with pencil so that I could correct. But that's just not the way that I do. In these drawings, I actually was doing a lot of smudging of the pen. So with this particular pen, it pushes out so much ink that you could actually smudge it. Because it's a 1.6, it's a ballpoint, it's a 1.6 millimeter tip, which is a bold tip. So when you smudge it, it gets pretty dark. But what I can tell you is when I did a lot of these smudging drawings, they're very fun. I think I have some more back here, like right here and right there and all these. But the problem with this is that I was mostly using my pinky finger, and I'm smudging and smudging and smudging. And after a while, I've actually worn out the fingerprint over here before, and it actually really hurt. Like I actually almost wore through the skin because I was doing so much drawing in one session that, I just wore through the skin a little bit. And I didn't really break the skin, but it was very close. And I remember my pinky hurting for a couple days. And I also don't know how healthy it is because I don't think this ink is non-toxic. So I'm sure that ink went into my bloodstream and all this other stuff, but the love of art, right? I'm not suggesting that you do it. I'm just telling you some of my stories about what went into making these drawings look the way that they do. Look at all these wiggly lines here. This is really cool. I love this. It's telling a story. Also, I'm following that pattern right here, but that's just the way the hat looked. I also think that I really captured the way the shadow landed on her face here really well. It really does look like a real shadow there. Whereas sometimes I think when I put shadows, I don't always think that I did the best job. Sometimes I feel like I could have did a better job. These shadows came out pretty decent too. Now in these drawings here, you can see I'm going with the darker lines, the really bold line. Like this is a really thick line. And then all these lines are more loose and lighter. And then a thick line here, another thick line for the glasses. And then the rest of these lines are very faint, but notice how the hair goes in different directions. We got one going here. We got some coming back here, suggesting it's going back behind the head. Then we have some going over here this way. And then these come out of here and go that way. And then these come out and go under and up and around the ear. Pretty cool to watch how the lines actually follow the hair, the direction of the hair. And this one I really like because of the way that I did her eyes. Just suggesting these, just this little bit suggested her eyes, like these 2 eyes here. I didn't draw full eyeballs and eyelids and everything. And obviously she was looking down, but just this little bit is enough to suggest a whole lot in the drawing. I got some zipper in there. Got some of this. And then look at this really thick line, right? Very thick line here. And these glasses. Look at the glasses frames. Been working on glasses. I think I'm gonna do another video where I just talk about different things that you can draw, because a lot of times people don't know what to draw. There were times where I literally would just put, you know, glasses there, and I would just sit there and draw the glasses. You know, I could barely see them because I just took my glasses off. But yeah, you know what I mean? So I think I'm going to do another video like that where I talk about different things that you could draw. And glasses are something that you want to get good at, because you're inevitably going to draw people who are wearing glasses, and you want to depict them pretty well, right? I really like this drawing because of all the wild lines that create the composition, the full final portion of his face, the final version of his face. There's so many lines in here, and some of them don't make sense. Like, why is this line here? I'm not sure if it was meant to outline a shadow or what, but just the fact that all of those lines are there, I just think it's pretty cool. And the energy in his face, he just looks like, yeah, I'm just sitting here waiting for the bus, or I'm waiting for the train. And you really do feel that in his face. And that's another thing, is like, you don't have to try to capture a person's energy. You just have to know the fundamentals that could allow you to draw what you see, and then the energy will automatically be in there. I teach that in my course, High Powered Drawing. This course right now, for a limited time, is free. Click the link in the description so you could get in on that deal. Got some zipper going on here. Zipper energy, zipper action. And I also communicated the different panels of the hat. So this is like a 5-panel hat, and then the little air holes in the hat. It took me a little while before I learned how to draw a hat and do the foreshortening to make it look like the bib was coming out at you, like this bib was coming out. That took a while. And you see this big mistake here, right? Look at the way this line is all wiggly jiggly. That's not supposed to be like that. Again, you probably didn't even notice that when you first looked at the drawing. This is why I tell people, don't worry about your mistakes. Just complete the drawing. But if you complete the drawing, you want to complete it with certain fundamentals, so that way there is some sort of structure in what you're drawing. And I teach all that in the course, High Powered Drawing. Pretty cool course. Get in on it. So this is a young man that I was teaching. I remember, I think I was at McClymonds in Oakland. I was teaching there in an after-school program, and he asked me to draw him. And I think the drawing came out really, really good. One thing I like about it is like his lip features and the nose. It really feels like his top lip is coming forward a little bit, and the nose is coming out at you a little bit. And I also like the animated quality. It looks like he's about to start talking to you. I believe he was wearing some sort of basketball hat with a logo on here, but I didn't draw the logo. I don't think I had enough time to draw all of that. Thanks for watching this sketchbook video. There is another part coming up. This is a very long series because I'm going through each picture with all of the detail and information of what I was going through, what I was thinking about, and all the different techniques that I was using in each of the drawings. Since you're still watching, hit the subscribe and like button. What it does is it sends a message to the algorithm that, hey, this is actually a kind of cool video that I think other people should find out about. So I'll see you in the next one.